Welcome, welcome everyone. Such an exciting night to be here on let's call this Warriors Wednesday. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna call it Warriors Wednesday. My name is Omar Wandera, and I am the Executive Director of SEO Scholars San Francisco. A longtime educator, son of Oakland, and I've benefited from community organizations and college access programs here in the Bay Area. So on the behalf of all the SEO staff, the Warriors Community Foundation team, we'd like to welcome you. Thank you for joining us tonight. We have an incredible lineup of panelists that are dedicated to youth and the outcomes for them and their families. They're passionate about college access for Bay Area students, and we'll get a chance to hear from them very soon. But before I introduce our moderator and panelists, we have a special message tonight from the Golden State Warriors' own Juan Toscano Anderson that he sent over earlier today.
Hi everyone, I'm Juan Toscano Anderson of the Golden State Warriors. I apologize that I can't be there in person tonight, but I wanted to give a special shout out to SEO Scholars, the San Francisco Unified School District, and San Francisco Achievers, also all of you in attendance who are working with and supporting our high school students. Obviously, the pandemic has completely changed the landscape of education, and those effects will not be going away overnight. That just means your work is even more essential to make sure our high school students are heard and have the support they need. So I simply want to show my appreciation for you and for all the high school students around the Bay who keep on thriving. On behalf of the entire Warriors organization, thank you for all that you do, and go Dubs.
Man, that was amazing. Super excited. Don't know what to do with myself now. Well, I keep on hearing Beat LA chants in my mind, but super excited. So let's get started. Tonight's conversation is moderated by Molly Lacob, a Warriors Community Foundation board member who oversees college access grantees and is also the Labor and Employment Council with KQED. Take it away, Molly.
Thanks, Omar, and many thanks to Juan for his kind words and kicking us off tonight. Hi, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Molly Lacob. I'm a board member with the Warriors Foundation, and I have a focus on college access. And really, as the child of two educators, I am so thrilled to moderate tonight's conversation and really excited that the Community Foundation for the Warriors and Generation Thrive could make this conversation possible. Tonight, we're going to talk about the college access space and hear about how these organizations have adapted and innovated in the face of COVID and how we as a community can support this work. A few housekeeping notes. Feel free to keep your cameras on, but please stay muted so we can hear our speakers. In the first half hour, I'll ask questions of our panelists before we turn and open it up to questions from the audience. We want to hear from you, so feel free to put it in the chat. We'll be recording the event, and so we can share it out with all of you afterwards. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists, who are also grantees of the Warriors Community Foundation. We have Danielle Adams of SF Achievers, Miranda Herrera of SEO Scholars, and Jenny Rong from the San Francisco Unified School District. To kick us off, will you each introduce yourselves?
Hello, everyone. My name is Danielle Adams, and I am the program manager for San Francisco Achievers. I've been with the organization for about 2.5 years now. And at San Francisco Achievers, I have the opportunity to work with an amazing staff where we support African-American young men as they look to pursue their college journey. We do this through 3 programs that we provide at the high school level, our Leadership Academy, and our college Scholar Success Program, in which we offer student scholarships.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Miranda Herrera. I am the Associate Director of College Admissions for SEO Scholars San Francisco. I have worked for the organization for 6 years, and in my role, I oversee college advising strategy and programming to ensure that our scholars are competitive candidates for top colleges and universities.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jenny Rong, Supervisor with San Francisco Unified. I'm in the Office of Counseling and Post-Secondary Success. And in my current role, I oversee college access work, partnering with City College of San Francisco, SF State, also overseeing the financial aid access and Cal Grant access for almost close to 4,000 seniors each year. And I started out as a teacher and then administrator, but I've spent most of my career in college access work. So it's very near and dear to me.
Great, thank you all. Miranda, we're going to start with a question that might be hard to imagine because I'm going to ask you to think about the world pre-COVID. So for those of us on the call tonight who might be new to college access or just maybe not as rooted in the education landscape, can you share some of the barriers that students faced pre-COVID in gaining admission to and then graduating from a four-year college?
Absolutely. So I'll start off with a figure. Nationally, our six-year graduation rate is 56%, which is really dismal, right? So I think that tells us that all students face some barriers to college graduation, but those barriers are particularly noticeable for low-income first-generation students, and those are the demographics of students that we serve in SEO. And in many ways, the challenges pre-COVID and during COVID have remained the same for students. Under-resourced students historically face challenges realizing their college dreams, be that in academic preparedness, knowledge of financial aid and scholarship resources, or even just lack of basic understanding to their college options. All of us that attended college remember how overwhelming that was, right? Just that process of narrowing down a college list. So for our students, that's particularly challenging. And that's where organizations like SF Achievers and SEO Scholars come into play. It's hard to anticipate the hurdles that a college student might face if you're the first in your family to attend college. So access to a network and resources of a support system can really help in ensuring college graduation and outcomes. And persistence is really connected to academic preparedness and financial resources. So those are two things that I would say definitely are really super important in college graduation.
Thanks for that background. Jenny, from the district's perspective, how have you historically approached college access?
So the district has a strong history of college access. I could say we have had a long college going culture. On average, in the last 10 years, our average of college enrollment has been around 80%. You know, it fluctuates a percent here or percent there. But each high school has their system of supports. They have workshops, they have drop-in computer lab time. We have had a long history of a lot of community partnerships like SEO and SF Achievers coming into our schools and supporting them and outreaching students so that they can support our students. Each school has always had a Cash for College night to help families complete their financial aid applications. And in fact, the district has changed our graduation requirements to be aligned with the UC's A through G requirement. So if a student graduates from SFUSD with a C or higher, they are automatically A through G eligible or qualified. So we've had a long history of, really supporting college access.
Yeah, I remember when the A through G requirements, a lot of school districts started to sync up with that, and suddenly a lot of students who hadn't maybe planned on attending college for their entire high school career suddenly found themselves eligible because the districts had helped them out in that regard. So Danielle, a little easier question, because we're going to fast forward back to today, back to 2020, now we're in 2021. So when we've seen just a year, 14 months of layoffs, record highs of unemployment and joblessness, how has COVID impacted the college access space specifically?
I will say overall, I'll speak about overall and then just some things that we've seen just in general as it pertains to each level. Overall, students being online is not as motivating to a lot of students. So trying to find ways to keep them motivated to want to be online, to actually attend class, and then let alone be a part of a CBO and be a part of a program that's online and virtual, it has not been as motivating in this space. So just having to get very creative within that. Also thinking of different ways that organizations can be creative within their resources now. Everything being virtual, everyone had to figure out how to make that shift, whether it's through internships. How do you do a virtual internship when everything was hands-on? So trying to really just get innovative, and it took a lot of organizations and companies, I would say almost at least 6 months, really to start figuring out what was working. And I think a complete year to actually be able to get baselines and see the results of, did it work, did it stick, those type of things, as well as a lack of social engagement. Being on Zoom, we only get to, as everyone is muted now, you know, many times that's the case being in a classroom. So the students not being able to interact with one another, that really, it puts them at a disadvantage and within social skills and really gaining that socialization experience that they would normally get to be able to interact with their peers and their teachers and even employers. I will say at the college level of our students, many of our students with the scholarships that we offer, we do see a reduction in terms of our renewal. A lot of students are waiting to go back to school in person, so they've taken a year off. We hope that they go back, but many times we know that once they take a year off, they begin to work. So there's no guarantee that they will actually go back to school because now they're making money and that's where their focus has shifted to. So just trying to stay connected to them. At the graduation, students that are getting ready for graduation, we see that they are looking for more resources. They're really lost. They have to connect with their career center virtually, hoping that someone connects back, relying heavily on LinkedIn, hopefully that their profile is more developed. And just really out there searching, especially for the guy, I'll say for our guys that are not really sure of what they want to do. So they're even more now just out there searching, and they go get a job instead of looking for, how do I get in line with my career or what I thought was my end game when I came into college. So now they're doubting themselves a lot more in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, the second that a student gets that first paycheck, the desire to then give that up and go back to school is lost, particularly when they're seeing, friends and family members struggle and not have jobs. So, it's really heartbreaking to hear that. Jenny, what are you specifically seeing with the school district students at SFUSD?
Yeah, the pandemic has been very difficult. To an institution that's been only in person and doing in-person work to just overnight going virtual has been very challenging, both for the educators and for the students. So literally, our college going culture got eliminated overnight because students aren't able to see their friends next to them or chit chat and say, hey, where are you applying to? What's that form you're doing? So that kind of collaboration and peer-to-peer support was all gone. And now that we've successfully moved online to online teaching, students have their cameras off. They don't get to talk to each other. So, and it's very quiet. I've jumped into classes to do presentations and talk about financial aid and whatnot. And, it's very quiet. So I have to kind of nudge students like, hey, are you there? Did you apply yet? Did you finish your FAFSA or DREAM Act? So it's a lot of legwork. Additionally, because college campuses have closed, students felt like, I am not paying for, this very expensive college education when I'm just doing it from home. So there was a lot of wait and see what was going to happen. And in fact, the class of 2020, we sheltered in place for, a couple months, but last year alone, we dropped in 7% of college enrollment. We're working really hard this year. So, we'll see. But yeah, it's been challenging.
Yeah, that's just devastating to hear. And, I know a lot of us remember that when we were in high school, the excitement around applying for college and talking to your peers, it was in person and you made decisions based on seeing a campus. I know I changed my mind after several college visits. I was, a ping pong ball, just based on what I was able to do in person. And these students are really losing out on that crucial social element. So specifically, you know, rising seniors, I think, are probably the ones that have been the most impacted. So Miranda, what can you offer, or what can you share with us rather about how our rising seniors and maybe even some college age students have been impacted?
Absolutely. Before I jump into talking about seniors and college age students, I think just talking about all of our families, right? So all of our high school students, most families experience some sort of job loss. And many students took on additional roles in the home, whether that was, you know, taking care of siblings or an older grandparent. And that took time away from them being able to devote to their schoolwork. And that really came into play for college applications as well for our rising seniors, both last year and this year. We saw that our students really needed to be driven and independent and self-motivated to seek out the help that they needed. No longer could you maybe run into your counselor in the hallway at school. So you had to find their email address and email them and make sure you set up the Zoom appointment. So these were all things that we saw students were having to do more and more of, right? And in SEO, recruitment even turned to becoming virtual. So we had to create an entirely new strategy to reach students who, as Jenny was saying, were not even turning on cameras maybe in their classrooms. We talk a lot in SEO about growth mindset, and we talked with our seniors about how this was new for everyone, right? This was something that every single person was going through. From the college side, we were hearing from many college professionals that they didn't necessarily want to hear about COVID on a college application because everybody was experiencing COVID. So how could students particularly talk about how it affected them in their lives? We know in SEO, something that was a huge stressor for our scholars and for all students really was the SAT, right? Or the ACT testing and just the unknowns around tests. And how they were going to play a role or not in college admissions last year and this year even. And so that was a huge stressor for our students. Another thing too is that we have these capstone experiences that we call enrichment programs during the summer before senior year. So students maybe participate in a pre-college program, or they do an internship or study abroad. And so a lot of those programs were canceled, right? Like Danielle was saying too, how they were either canceled or students had to figure out, like, how do you do an internship virtually if that was an adaptation, right? So in SEO, something that we did and talked about with our seniors was the renewed focus on college essay writing. So how could we really strengthen essays to tell our story? Since college admissions officers really only have what we put on paper in front of them, right? So we focus on essay writing. Like you were saying, Molly, you know, how you went around to visit college campuses, that was no longer an option. So even in SEO, we had to cut our 4-day college tour to Southern California that we take our juniors on every year during spring break. And in many ways, that was sort of leveled the playing field a little bit, because traditionally first generation low income students are unable to visit these college campuses, even sometimes in their own state if it's far away. So nobody could do that, right? So we had to look at virtual options, which luckily a lot of colleges provided a wide array of virtual options. And then finally, you know, like our college age students needed a lot of support too. And I can talk about how in SEO, our college persistence advisors on the college scholars side jumped in last year in March to really help scholars figure out how to store their belongings at college when maybe they were on spring break and they had to go back to campus, or maybe they were back home in California and had to figure out their belongings. They helped them to buy flights home and get housing and technology needs. And then of course, provided that social, emotional, and financial support that we saw so many students in college really needed. So many of those challenges, I would say, are still persistent, but we're finding ways and hope, knowing that hopefully there's a return to in-person campuses starting in the fall.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. And I remember in the fall when I was checking in with SEO, actually, we were talking about just the unanticipated expenses that so many of these students couldn't have foreseen. None of us foresaw the pandemic, but those expenses of having to get home, having to store their things, no one knew what to do. And it's been wonderful that so many of our organizations, that you all are a part of, have been able to step in and fill that gap. I want to direct this to all of you and maybe put a more positive spin on things. So we had a year just filled with challenges, but have there been any bright spots for your community and organizations? Any pleasant surprises, maybe developments that wouldn't have come but for the pandemic?
Definitely, there's some positives. So our technology skills are much better. I'm a Zoom expert now. And, for the longest time, we've been advocating to provide students with laptops. And the saying is always, it's too expensive, but the pandemic hit and suddenly all these donations came in, the district found the money. So every student got a Chromebook or a hotspot, so more families learned how to connect via Zoom or through their phone. So, there are advantages. I'm able to have 6 meetings a day as opposed to being in person where it's just very limited. So many positives.
We actually did have a lot of great positives in terms of connecting with companies that we probably wouldn't have connected with in person. This past year, we've had the opportunity to connect with Netflix, Louis Vuitton, Ubisoft Gaming Company, and do some amazing things and some networking opportunities that was actually open to both our high school and college students. Many times it's very hard for our college students to gain access to this because they are all over the US. So this space being virtual, it allowed our students that were on the East Coast or in the South to be able to connect and actually still be able to connect with people at these companies. I will also say that we had an increase in internship placement. With being able to see the interest of our students, we had some companies that have reached out specifically to us to be involved with SFA and opportunities to our young men. So those numbers have increased in terms of students having placement for this summer. So that is something that we're very excited about. And I guess also just our guys, this class, they're excited to hopefully go in person and really highlight that. So as we prepare them and celebrate them, looking forward to getting their graduation in person. So there's some bright spots that they're hoping that we still look forward to coming. But programmatically, we did have the opportunity to incorporate some great things that have really helped our young men grow.
That's wonderful, Danielle. And I remember when you were telling me that these companies that typically maybe might not have the time or the resources to host some of your scholars, because we moved into a virtual space, suddenly they could carve out 30 minutes if they didn't have to have a whole cohort of people coming into the building. So that's really great to hear. Miranda, what bright spots have you seen?
Yes, thanks, Molly. So in SEO, we really embraced our motto of seizing every opportunity and tried to reframe our mindsets to think about what opportunities might arise with COVID. And one of the exciting things is that we are talking about a permanent hybrid model so that we can expand our geographic reach. With the new class that we just recruited, our 9th grade class, we were able to expand from just recruiting in San Francisco to accepting students from Oakland, from Richmond, and from Hayward. And in turn, we doubled the number of students in our 9th grade class to expand the opportunity of SEO to more scholars. And we also had amazing college admissions results this class, which we are so proud of. We had a lot of firsts for college admissions. We had a GATE scholar, which is a full scholarship and access to an incredible network. We had our very first Posse scholar in our San Francisco office, which is a full tuition scholarship to a partner college for Posse. And we had our first San Francisco QuestBridge scholars as well. not one, but two this year. And for Questbridge scholars, they'll receive a full scholarship to top colleges. So we are so proud of those students in particular, and that 90% of our cohort were accepted to top tier colleges and universities, which we know will make a huge difference in their persistence to college graduation. Another exciting thing is, like Danielle was saying, more and more companies were interested in hosting interns because it was maybe a little bit more accessible virtually. And I think there is just sort of a renewed focus on offering opportunities to underrepresented programs and lots of new partnerships with corporations from that internship program. And something that we are particularly excited about kicking off this summer is that we created a partnership with a local community college, so that for the first time we can offer college courses during our summer academy programming. And we know with the absence of SAT, ACT scores, we need something else for our scholars to be able to put on their college applications. And what better than a rigorous course load? So we're really excited to be able to bring the community college to SEO and offer those courses to students to ensure that they have college credit before graduating from high school.
Thanks, Miranda. So it really sounds like there's been a huge shift onto online, right? Everything is virtual. In some ways, that was great. We could access more things. In other ways, we had restrictions or restraints on technology and what organizations could get their hands on. And so we had just a very different shift in landscape and how our access programs were approaching getting into college and succeeding. So Jenny, how has your organization as a whole, how has the district really responded to this major shift? And do you think that's kind of where you're going to stay, or are we kind of gearing back toward hopefully enough people get vaccinated, we get back to normal, maybe we're a hybrid? What's it looking like over at the district?
Yes, so the shift this year, because we've been pretty much closed until, well, we were online until just April when schools started opening back up. We had to pivot quite a bit. First, to learn all the technology, and then second, to develop ways to kind of access students, whether it's jumping into a teacher's class or creating office hours, creating just virtual Zoom links where people that's attached to your email signature. So just being able to coach and be creative and learning from our partners. One, very timely thing that happened was the Stepsky Foundation gave us a grant, and we were not anticipating to be in a pandemic, but we were able to hire district coordinators and hire about 14 college ambassadors that are college students, mostly alumni of the district. And because they're young people, they were able to virtually meet with a lot of our seniors and help them through that process. And they themselves were, doing online college. So they were able to, understand and help students through the process. Other ways we pivoted is we still offered in-person financial aid support. It was very difficult to, get it approved, but we did some outdoors support sessions, and families came, and it was very difficult for them to navigate the whole FAFSA PIN, the whole process, because it's so challenging. We also helped our partners get district emails so that they can actually jump into our systems and join our classes because we use Google and it doesn't allow outsider access. We also share data more frequently. So I send out financial aid reports weekly to schools starting in October so that people could actually, target in and focus on students who have not completed their applications and share it with our partners and have them help and break up the caseload and just really working together and collaboratively. So just a lot of pivoting, a lot of learning. And now as we're committed to opening back up, I think we're going to still adopt a lot of the lessons learned, using hybrid model, like using Zoom for family meetings. It's been accessible for a lot of families, but still offering in person. So I think, it's going to be a very exciting next couple of years.
Yeah, that's great. And it's funny you mentioned the FAFSA pin. I weirdly found it in a stack of paperwork that I was getting rid of, and it's been quite some time since I filled out that paperwork, but I remember how hard it was. And I had parents who went to college, and we were struggling to fill out that paperwork. And so I can't even wrap my brain around how hard it would be for a family who's looking at that paperwork for the first time, and they can't just walk over to the school and ask for help or ask a college counselor to sit there with the paperwork. It's hard to do it digitally. So my heart goes out to everyone that had to navigate that in a COVID world this year. Danielle, what about SF Achievers? How have you all shifted?
So everything we do is virtually. We did increase workshops that we did, actually that we were not doing in the past, just because of the accessibility for students in terms of getting to their high school counselors. So we hosted the UC writing workshop with the district. And that through that actually carried on into us hosting scholarship workshops. So we did a lot of those virtual, whether it was one-on-one. The guys were a little reluctant initially, but they seen the benefits. So as they seen that we were persistent and we showed up, they began to show up. In terms of programming numbers, they stayed pretty consistent throughout our high school programming. Same with our Leadership Academy. As I said, we got to connect more with our scholars. We normally don't see them until it's honestly check time in terms of them getting their disbursement. So being able to actually interact and them actually utilize the support services that we do offer. We also offered more tutoring. We partnered with SEO on trying to get some more guys involved with the tutoring services offered. But just even getting our college guys, our first year college guys, they took advantage of an online tutoring service that we partner with on Eurekly. And so they got more support because many of them were still struggling virtually. So it just allowed us to stay in our virtual space, but to be able to provide more for them to be able to navigate, because it has been hard, especially on the college campuses, just to connect with a tutor or connect even with your professor, because a lot of them have the same needs and the time is just not there. Or the student schedules are all over the place and they're trying to work, maintain home as well as maintain school. So just being able to be another layer of support to really support our students as best as we possibly can through this virtual capacity. And just be here, just always here.
Yeah, I understand that. Miranda, I know that SEO, shifted quickly as well. How do you think you all will stay on this path or reintegrate back to what you were doing? Hybrid model. I know hybrid's the buzzword right now, right, for all of our lives. It's a hybrid model. Some things are going to stay virtual. Some things are going to be back in person. What are you all doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we pivoted really quickly and we were able to switch to fully virtual within a week of lockdown. We did not want our scholars to lose any time and get off track with their college goals, because those are so important to them and to us and drive all that we do. Something that we did throughout the first summer in particular was really we focused on social emotional support for our students. And we helped motivate them through something that we called community conversations that we implemented with scholars during our opening circle time on Saturdays and in the summer. So those were conversations that scholars could really drive and talk about issues that were going on in the world and with COVID. And we saw that through the addition of conversations like those and with maintaining just the really high expectations of our programming, that we see the same participation rates, we see the same attendance rates, we see cameras on because scholars want to connect with each other. And we did make some changes in terms of how we implement classes, right? Obviously, number one, switching to virtual, but we knew that our old model wasn't going to work copy paste into Zoom. And so we made some changes with the instructional model. We adapted a co-teaching model, which meant a higher teacher to student ratio so that students would really get the attention and time that they needed in learning all of this new information, especially since some schools, as we remember, we're not virtual right away. And so SEO became the sort of place where scholars could have one-on-one attention with their instructors. And, as we all see, just even from today's Zoom session, Zoom, you have to do a lot of multitasking, right? And so we were able to sort of provide a lot of training for our instructors and our scholars too, just of like, how do you use Zoom to make it work so that it's a learning environment for you and not just a video that you're looking at. So that was something that we did. And then another thing in terms of technology, we created Google accounts for all of our students so they're able to learn the Google Suite and connect with each other in that way. We also introduced a new learning management system called Brightspace. Before COVID, we were pretty low tech at SEO, and now scholars really have access to a lot of resources in the online space. It sort of was a forcing function for us to introduce technology for scholars and in our program and to prepare them for college, right? Because we know how much students rely on technology and computers in college. So it's great practice for them. Like I mentioned before, our community college courses, right, introducing that and ensure that we really want our students to be able to see themselves in a college course, to practice what it feels like to be in a college classroom by actually being in that college classroom, regardless of it being virtual, and exploring and discovering who they are in that space. We want to focus our efforts on helping them improve, right? And especially as first generation students, to be able to have that practice in high school is just going to be life-changing for them in a lot of different ways. And then again, the internship program that I mentioned before with Advent International, we partnered with them to help place students in a 3-week paid internship this summer to bolster their network, their experiences, and in turn their college applications. For a high school student to be placed at a company like Advent, even for a 3-week internship virtually, is just a huge learning experience. And ultimately, we've really leaned into this, seized the opportunity of being virtual and in COVID, and relied on our community together.
Yeah, it really sounds like we've all had a lot of shared experiences. I don't know how many of you all had been on a Zoom call before March of 2020. I know maybe I had been on one or two, and we really jumped into the deep end. So it sounds like probably as a community, even outside of this group here tonight, we all had to get on the technology train, probably a lot faster than we anticipated. Before we get to our last topic, I just want to remind everyone that we are going to have a question and answer session, and we have a chat function. So if you want to take advantage of our 3 experts here tonight, we strongly encourage you to put your questions in the chat so that way we can make sure they get answered. So please take advantage of their knowledge. It's so awesome that we have everyone all here together. So kind of to bring this full circle, I think there are probably many of us here this evening that are wondering, okay, what next? What can we do? We're part of this San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose, Bay Area. I can't forget the North Bay. Let's throw in Marin. We're part of this Bay Area community. What can we do together to ensure that students gain the resources that they need in order to thrive? Miranda, why don't you kick us off?
Yes, I'll kick us off. So something that you can do is stay engaged and stay in touch with SEO Scholars by following us on social media, by subscribing to join our newsletter, by attending future events, and volunteering with us. So we're going to put the social media channels in the chat so you can easily click and follow along. And as we've been talking about, there's a ton of opportunities to get involved with college access programs, whether that be by donating your time, your expertise, or donating money, to ensure that programs like SEO Scholars can deliver our program and deliver for our scholars. And this year marks SEO Scholars' 10th anniversary. And so we're really looking to our community to help us invest in the next 10 years as we double our impact. And if you follow along with us, you'll be seeing highlight stories of scholars across our grade levels. One was just published today, and it's so exciting to see the stories of our scholars highlighted and how we've impacted their lives over the last 10 years.
That's great. Danielle, if we really want to support SF Achievers, what can we do?
Everything Miranda said times 10. Mentoring is a big component in terms of our guys that we look to pair our young men up with their first year in college. We also look to have career mentors for our guys that are soon to be graduating that want that specific advice in the field that they're looking to explore. So we look for career mentors as well as just overall mentors. Volunteering as well, work site visits, hopefully getting back to in-person, but virtual is still amazing. Volunteering when we do get back to actual in-person event, we work very closely with Calvary Presbyterian Church. They do a lot of work with us. And so we hope to get more organizations and companies and just people in general to want to connect and support our young men, as well as just doing speaker series. Everyone has a story to share and in terms of their journey. So the more things that, the more stories that we can share with our young men, the better. We do not expect to be the experts in every area, whether it's financial literacy, resume writing, those different type of things. And we know that in order to prepare these students for college, we want to get them as well-rounded as possible. So bringing in companies and organizations or just people that have experience in to be able to support our students in those different areas is always a plus. So the more, the better. But like I said, Miranda, everything she said times 10, we need it all, but thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I know the first answer is always get out your checkbook. But then, what are other things we can do on top of getting out our checkbooks? Jenny?
Well, whatever Danielle said times 100, because, the district, just San Francisco alone serves 56,000 students. So, being a mentor, we have a really strong mentor program, and it starts very early on, the little ones, the elementary school kids, and it's very structured. They give you all the prompts, what topics to talk about, even little, craft kits. And, when you start with a young one and you start, motivating them and telling them that they have a future, they can go to college, they can have a great career, it's very powerful. So definitely can be a mentor with the district. Definitely you can contribute, your random tickets that you're not attending to, like, sporting events, a Warriors ticket, so on and so forth. We're also always looking for Raffle Prizes. Our district funds are very limited. We can't buy gift cards, and we can't buy technology. We can't buy iPads as prizes because they're taxpayers' money. So, we kind of look for donations, and that helps get people to come to Cash for College nights or writing workshops and so forth. There's also other ways to help support. A lot of our schools do career week and, volunteering to just be a guest speaker, just to talk about your journey and what you do as a professional is really impactful. If you can have your organization adopt a school, we have a lot of that going on too. That really supports the school culture. And, lastly, just being advocates for the college access space. The school district is pre-K through 12, and then a lot of this post-secondary work is usually seen as secondary. And when budgets are tight, the college counselor gets cut first, or that college visit gets cut right away. So, just being advocates and keep keeping it in the forefront of our board members and our educators. So just saying it's important, we can't, not do this work. So, that would be very, very helpful to maintain our, culture.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think so many people forget, that advocating at the local level, we all get excited about national elections and what's going on in the country, but advocating for what you want and need at the local level is just as important, if not more important, because this is impacting all of our students. We do have some questions from the audience. I selfishly would like to ask a question first to Jenny, just because, in addition to making monetary donations, I always love to volunteer my time. And so when I hear that I can be a mentor, that's really exciting to me. So can you share a little bit on what the time commitment is? Because I think all of us here tonight are thinking, gosh, I would love to help these students. I've got a 40, 50, 60 hour a week job. I've got multiple kids. I've got family obligations. What kind of commitment are you all looking for from your mentors?
Usually the mentor program asks you to probably volunteer once a month, and it could be a lunch period or, like 40 minutes, 45 minutes. When pre-COVID, the mentor would go sit at lunch with the student while they're having lunch and just, chit chat with them. And it's, that's the month commitment. And if you had more time, the mentor group usually finds donations or tickets to museums or games, and you could go with your mentee to that game, on a weekend. But the commitment's fairly light, and it's very, very impactful.
Great. That's that's a great ratio, light commitment to high impact. I think that's something we're probably all capable of doing. Okay, I have a question for Miranda from Brandon in the audience, and he's interested in knowing, as a rising junior in high school, should he be worried that he hasn't been able to take the SAT?
That's a really great question, and I think it demonstrates what a lot of students are feeling right now. This uneasiness as to whether or not they'll be able to safely sit to take a test, which traditionally has played such a huge role in the college application process. So I would say to Brandon, think about what's in your control that you can enhance and improve upon for your college application. If there's still time at your school, can you add one more AP or honors course to your course load for next academic year? Could you enroll at City College of San Francisco or your local community college for a course this summer? Can you think about a virtual internship or something like that? We know that a lot of colleges have committed to being test optional again for this next academic year, which is great. But we don't know if the test is going to go away forever, right? And that seems unlikely. So thinking about what else the students can do to enhance their college application is a great way to sort of think about that, putting your energy. And the last piece I'll say is writing, right? We mentioned earlier that in SEO, we had a renewed focus on college essay writing. So what can you do as a student to be practicing and improving your essay writing skills this summer in particular?
That's great advice. Jenny, I have a question for you from Stephanie, who is an assistant professor at Savannah State University in Georgia. And she says she's always looking for ways to get her students involved in community work, even if it's from a distance. So do you all have any roles for out-of-state volunteers, such as peer mentors? And I'm wondering if maybe, as we've talked about this shift to embrace technology, if Stephanie's really hitting the nail on the head here, that maybe next year, could mentors be virtual?
Yeah, I think, not at the current moment, but I'd love to have professors contact, and as we're developing out this virtual space, definitely can use her students' help with coaching, helping students with their essays, helping them think about majors. There's just a lot of help we can incorporate. But yes, please share with me your contact information.
If I could chime in here too, we found a way to partner with U Chicago, even virtually, and through their summer match program, we're going to have 2 of their current students actually intern for us this summer, so that they can learn about the nonprofit world and what that's like to work in the college access space. So I think if there's opportunities like that at the college level, absolutely, all of our organizations and school districts can use support. So thinking about ways to use the college students as well.
Great. So it looks like we have figured out how to track down Professor Alexander. So we will share that with you, Jenny. I think, Danielle, maybe this one will be for you. What strategic partnerships do you think will help advance SF Achievers' goals for college access? So what would be your pie in the sky?
Every look at everyone. I think really, and I think Miranda probably, and even Jenny can probably attest to this, there are a lot of CBOs that we have that do a lot of amazing work. And I think really knowing what each school has to offer and those different type of things, I think we can really leverage each other. And I think COVID this time has allowed us to connect more than we were if we were just actually at the schools working with our students, because everyone's recruitment numbers are low. And those type of things, like Miranda just said, they're connecting with someone all the way in Chicago. So being able to connect with those different type of orgs, I think we all have a lot of grassroots that can help bridge those large gaps. Because let's be honest, just going to reach out to Salesforce, how much leverage do you really have if you don't have a connection there? But if SEO Scholars has a connection with Salesforce, then now as we grow and then we have something that can help SEO Scholars, now it really works together rather than trying to reach out to these large organizations or large companies to say, hey, we have students that are interested in internships. Do you know anyone? No. So I think really utilizing the network that we have in front of us and really maximizing. And I think this time has allowed us to lean on each other more in terms of support. And I think that actually having talks like this with just all CBOs, and what we have to offer, and really creating a platform for the district, even if it comes in a sense of a manual. This organizations offer that. So now we can really work together and grow that as a whole, because we don't know what each other is doing until we all talk about it in this space. And then now we're getting close to the end of the year. So we can use each other come the summer and, in the fall, but it's great to know earlier on the support that our students do have. So really bridging together with our community.
Yeah,
and if I
absolutely.
could add on, sorry, Molly.
No worries.
Say, if I could jump in on that too, like Danielle saying, I think there are so many opportunities for CBOs to work together because we do have a common goal a lot of the times. And so that might be, for example, brainstorming and hosting a college fair virtually and inviting students across programs, or partnering with the school districts more thoughtfully to be able to recruit students, as Jenny was talking about before, that there was really this renewed focus in that area. So those two, I think, are great ideas. And also thinking through partnerships on the college level. Like I said, we were able to have this partnership with U Chicago, but we know that there are organizations like Questbridge, like Posse, thinking about how we can partner with organizations like those to be able to have even greater college outcomes for all of our students. So those would be some other opportunities I would add.
Absolutely. And I know one of the most rewarding things for the Warriors Community Foundation is kind of throwing our weight around in the community and connecting our grantees and supported organizations with the companies that we know. Like Danielle mentioned, it might be hard to say, knock, knock, I'm a student, I'd love to get an internship at Salesforce. And then SF Achievers can step in, and then, even the Warriors can step in and say, hi, we're the Warriors. Why don't you talk to our students? So yeah, banding together as a community, I think, is the most important thing. I have a question from Elisa. I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. She is wondering, to all of you, how your organizations have been able to help with students' mental health during the pandemic. that has clearly been the forefront for so many people. So I'll open it up to all three of you.
I'll jump right in. That is a component that we do support our students in on a daily. Our high school advisors, they do one-on-one check-ins with the young men that are in our program. At the college level, we do have student ambassadors as well as our mentors. So being able to connect them, and then something I referenced earlier, Calvary, they provided also some mental health services for through some people that they have that are health professionals, to be able to open that up to our different young men and just connecting with them with other different services that we're aware of, because this has been a trying time. And I also believe that our high school advisors going through certain trainings on different triggers and trying to be aware of those things. And I also believe that the relationships that we build with our young men, it really helps us know when there's been a change, whether it's the way that they're talking, the different mannerisms, even if it's on Zoom, and just creating that safe space for them to be able to come and talk to us openly about what's going on with them. So first thing, communication, so we can know that there is an issue, and that they do need a support in some type of area. And then second thing is connecting them to the right resource that they need in order to get the support that they need, because we are not their psychiatrists. We're the listening ear to help direct them in the path, and find the support for them.
Jenny and Miranda, you're both unmuted. So who wants to throw their hat in the ring?
Go ahead, Jenny.
Okay, so with the district, we're working with a lot of students. So we pivoted to create a lot of social emotional learning curriculum, sharing that it's school nurses, social workers, counselors, all really jumping into classes to share those lessons. Additionally, the district has made an attempt to call each and every family at least 3 times this year. If there's food insecurity, providing those resources, providing whatever supports we have. We also are, we had a lot of social workers do sidewalk checks. So, we weren't allowed to go into people's houses, but we met them at the door, at their front door or on the sidewalk, and chatted and, checked out how the students were doing. If it was a real, dire situation, we called child crises. But, we made a lot of attempts to support the social emotional well-being of students. But, additionally, the adults needed a lot of social emotional support too. So during our meetings and trainings, we kind of pivoted to make sure the adults were okay too. So yeah, but we're really looking forward to going back, and the students who have started last month have been so happy. So we're just kind of just anticipating that right now.
In SEO, we have a huge focus on relationship building, and we had to think through creative ways to do relationship building virtually. So something that I mentioned earlier was that we really encouraged cameras on from day one, because we didn't want us to create a situation where new scholars to the program maybe wouldn't even know who their classmate is when they walk down the street past each other. We wanted them to be able to have that sense of belonging by seeing each other and letting them know that we see you, you're important to each other. We thought through a lot of ways to creatively do small breakout rooms so that students can have time just with each other and not just with the instructor or program manager. But we also increased that one-on-one time with program managers too, because like both Danielle and Jenny are saying, that one-on-one focused attention time became so much more important and crucial. So we really were able to play on that in the high school level, and then in the college level. In our College Scholars program, all of our college persistence advisors are licensed social workers or counselors. And so they are all prepared with the background to support our college scholars in the best way possible. They already had their pairings set up. And so they had a dedicated person to go to chat about everything that was going on. And we know that This is something that all students were struggling with, was their mental health, right? So we thought about just how could we ensure that we're playing into that community that we try so hard to build in SEO and not losing that in the virtual world.
Great. So we are going to we have 2 more questions, and then I think we're going to close it out, just because I know that several of us, hopefully all of us, have an exciting 7 o'clock game to get to. I know Omar and I have planned our week around it. So we have a question from Amy, and she is wondering, how can higher institutions improve their services as they welcome incoming students to their campuses? So is it orientation? Is it a summer bridge program? What can they do to better support them in their first year?
I can jump in here first. I would say all of those things. Even before, I think, welcoming incoming students, creating more opportunities for students to visit your campus, especially thinking about students that might come from out of state. So paying for fly-in programs, for example, so that students can visit your campus. Or when you have a group like a CBO group or a high school group come to campus, pay for them for lunch so they feel welcome there on campus and can imagine themselves in the dining hall, for example. Sometimes we think that that might be silly, but it's such a huge experience for scholars to be able to sit in a dining hall. And absolutely having dedicated support through orientation for first generation students, for underrepresented students, creating spaces where they can see each other and meet each other and know that they have this community within the college community to rely on and lean back on throughout their experience.
Okay, that is great. I don't know, Danielle or Amy, do you have any thoughts on that, or did Miranda just really cover it all?
She covered a good portion. I think a lot of times, especially for first gen, many of the students see schools that are so far away, and they've never even, half of the time they don't even know what city the school is in. They just know the school. So just having more accessibility. I think even I worked with the university a few years ago, making even the virtual tours a little bit more interactive. Because students may not have the financial capabilities to be able to get there, or a school may not be able to fly in. So I think really highlighting, getting more student testimonials. So it may be connecting with a group that's on campus, whether it's a BSU or it's a business club, those different things that really spark the interest of a student. And actually, as I think about it, maximizing the clubs that are on the campus. So having them do things that show why they're interested, what made them start the clubs. So really maximizing why they're there. If you started a gaming club, let's talk about it, because students are interested in it. And that also can help grow that interest for the students, to see students talk about what they're excited about. And it's relatable to them. So I think just trying to get as more interactive as possible than showing the standard football field, gymnasium workout and the waterfall, just really let's get to the nitty gritty, especially if students can't get all the way just to say to New York to see a campus, or Savannah State, as we have a professor in there. So yeah, for me, that's it.
And I'd just like to jump in really quickly. High school students are, everything's done for them, like their classes are programmed, they're told like where to go, what to do, they get a lot of support, and, it's seen as, hand-holding them a lot. And then they're seniors and they graduate, and suddenly they're expected to be adults. So when they go into the college space, nobody's telling them what class to take, when to take it. Nobody's checking on their homework. So many times we see first generation students kind of just lost in that space, and freshman year is that time where, they gain the 15 pounds, but then their grades drop too. So, if colleges are more, thoughtful about the first year experience, and, assigning mentors, having people check in on these freshmen more often, it's really helpful, because honestly, an 18-year-old, if we think back, they're children basically. So, they're legally adults, but they're really young people, and they still need a lot of help. So that's kind of my plea.
Yeah, Jenny, I cringe when I think of how mature I was back then, which the answer is I wasn't, but I thought I was because I was so excited to be at college. So we do need to remember that those students need that extra support. And Jenny, I'm actually going to have you take it home for us. So Adam has just the perfect let's wrap this up question, which is what changes in the college application process do you think will remain permanent in a post-COVID world?
Yeah, that's actually a good one. And referring back to the SAT question, about 50% of our seniors go to either UC or CSU from our district. And the UCs have already declared that they are doing away with the SAT as an admissions requirement. They've already done some research that the SAT is very race-based and has very undesirable effects for first generation underserved students. So they're just doing away with it. So the CSUs usually follow them. And so for our public colleges, if that's the trend, a lot of our privates are also thinking of, right now it's optional, test optional, and they may be following that in those footsteps. So we've seen, record numbers, a lot more African-American students apply to UC Berkeley, while, in the past, maybe because of their SAT scores, they weren't able to. So there's some positives coming out of that. I suspect we might go in that direction. I couldn't speak for out of state, but, that's where our public colleges are going.
Great. Yeah, I know there's been a lot of questions asked about whether or not the ACT and the SAT are the right metric to measure student success. So it sounds like the message is, particularly, who was asking us that earlier, if they need to be worried about the SAT. But, let's say study for now, and we'll keep our fingers crossed that maybe we have seen the end of the SAT and the ACT. So thank you, Danielle. Thank you, Miranda. Thank you, Jenny. I am going to throw it back to Omar to wind us up for the evening.
Thank you. This is, I had high expectations coming in for what we could learn and how much we could grow from this conversation. And this has really just far exceeded my expectations. So I just want to congratulate and thank each and every one of you for being here and participating with us. But I want to give a special thank you to our moderator, Molly Lacob. She couldn't have done that more elegantly or with more class. And I also just want to give a huge shout out to the panelists. I know that it's a big deal to give up your time in the evenings, especially if you have kids at home. So, man, the words don't even describe how amazing this event was tonight. So, special shout out. Thank you, Danielle Adams. Thank you, Miranda Herrera. Thank you, Jenny Rong. You just did a phenomenal job in educating all of us and getting each and every one of us one step closer to helping kids achieve their college dreams. So this event would not have been possible without the Warriors Community Foundation. Just a huge thank you to them and all the financial support that they give to each and every one of us to allow us to do our work. The opportunity really to be able to connect all of us and bring us all together and partner with one another has been evidenced here tonight. I think earlier we spoke a little bit about how much that CBOs can really kind of rely on each other. And I think we're going to have to take Molly up and having the Warriors be the big brother that knocks on the door and connects us in some really special, meaningful ways. I want to give another shout out to Oakland's own Juan Toscano Anderson for his message of support. It really kind of set the stage for us to be able to have a conversation about college access. It just feels good to be connected to so many wonderful people in the community and to know that there are folks out there that are really dedicating their lives and their time to outcomes for youth and generational change for people's families. Also just want to say thank you again for spending an evening with us. All of you that are on page 2, 3, 4, and 5. for helping us further this conversation and asking really good questions. I hope each and every one of you stay involved with our organizations and find ways that you can support and help and connect. And if there's something that really resonated with you tonight, reach out to one of these organizations and see where there may be some opportunity for further growth. I'm hoping, and I'm just going to put this out there, I'm hoping this is the first annual event. I think it'll be great for us to continue the spirit of this conversation in future years. So once again, thank you all. Have a fantastic night. Go Warriors, beat LA. Let's do it tonight. But thank you so much to each and every one of you. It's been a fantastic event and fantastic night. Appreciate you all.